they can transfer the parameters from one power source to the cloud, and the cloud to another power source in different country or in everywhere.
I think the most prominent trend is the introduction of cobot welding. Both good welders and good robot operators in scarce demand.
And in my point of view, robotics is a culture of the company. We can introduce these little by little.
And I need to be really efficient on programming it. There is where a software like Octopus could really help.
Welcome everybody. My name is Fabio Tiburi. I'm here in the Sumig headquarters to talk with Mr. Petter. Nice to meet you, Petter.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk a little bit about robotics and digital solution today.
Yeah. And my name is Petter Svensson. I'm the Global Director of Robotic Welding at ISAB. Very happy to be here at Sumig in Caxias do Sul.
Nice. It's a pleasure to us to receive you in our facility. And we're gonna talk a little bit about robotics, digital solution, your experience. When you start to work with robotic?
So it's been a gradual approach for me. I've been with ISAB for quite a while, but I most recently worked in digital solution to help really shape what ISAB has done in the digital space. And then a couple of years ago, we added to our portfolio Octopus, the robotic programming solution. That really drove an interest in me. And then a year ago, I had the opportunity to move over to robotic welding and help lead the product team on robotic welding to really put ISAB, to help ISAB step into the next age in robotics.
Yeah, actually, robotics is now is not only now a trend, but in some country like us, there is a trend. There is a lack of people to work in the factories, so it's becoming more and more popular. And ISAB is making this continues this job. I can say that to offering this opportunity to a company to improve their efficiency. Nice. So talk a little bit about the global trends about robotics. What's your point of view about the robotics worldwide nowadays?
So there's a couple of things going on right now. As you mentioned, there is a global shortage of really skilled welders. And that's nothing new. That's been there for quite a while. And that's part of why robotic welding has been becoming more and more available. And what we see right now is really this trend supercharging with more and more easy to use solutions. I think the most prominent trend is the introduction of cobot welding, where it's not really an automation solution anymore. You don't need a robotic programmer to be able to do it. It's rather a welding machine that you can provide to a manual welder, and with a couple of days of training, he's able to run that machine and multiply his output. And if you're struggling with finding good welders, well, now your manual welder can produce 4 times output. So that is one thing that's happening. Then on the same time, like the requirements are becoming higher and higher, and welding companies compete on outperforming each other in new exotic weld modes, and it's less spatter and it's higher speed and it's deeper penetration and it's less deformation and it's bridge gapping and all these things where the welding companies are competing against each other. That's also a big trend that we see.
I agree that the shortage of laborers here in our country, which is in Brazil, there is some customer of us from all directions, from north and south and east and west, and they are saying that they don't find welders. We already discussed why this happened, and we know that the service jobs are increasing in our country, so people prefer to stay in a car like Uber or at home working with digital marketing instead of welding in a factory. Is not a matter of the payment. In US, for example, the salary of a welder is very high, and there is 350 position that there is no welder to cube. So in Europe, I believe this already happened in the past.
It is a similar trend in Europe. Where,
The same
like it is hard to find someone who, especially the young people, that wants to work in welding. And it's one of the solutions to that is, of course, automation. There's also, we need to make the trade more attractive to attract the younger generation to it.
Yeah, the younger generation like more digital thing. They born in a touch era, so they started their life using a touch screens, and they when they become a worker, when they want to go to the factory, they don't want to, for example, take a pendant that which is to programming the robot, and they prefer to use a software. So our solution for offline programming is very easy to use, so attract this young generation. And the companies, I believe, must to make this using protection, personal protection equipment comfortable, and the environment comfortable. Otherwise, the few people that want to work with this will prefer companies that is better the mask or the gloves and the software and the robot. So is not a trend, but is a necessity today going this direction.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's really a matter of how do we continue to increase the quality of the welding we do with less and less people, and that they're like offline programming and cobots and so on is really a key solution.
Yeah, this is we are talking about the cobots and the robot, and you mentioned that there is a fusion in your point of view in the future, because this is the next question, that in from now to 5 and 10 years, what's your point of view of about robotics, about this?
So really what you see when you're out talking to customers, talking to industry experts, and looking at what's shown at fairs, it's really this simplification. Like the industry has realized, okay, both good welders and good robot operators is in scarce demand. And a solution for that is to make it easier. So we see that on cobots. It is a trend, but the reason why it's picking up is because you're making it so easy to weld with a robot that any skilled welder is able to pick it up. And when you look at the industrial side, these kind of tools are starting to emerge as well. So being able to program in more of a CAD-like environment with offline programming, that's not super new. It's becoming better and better and easier to use, but it's not something that was invented yesterday. But now the next steps on that journey is companies that have more of a cobot approach for industrial robots. So it can be visual tools where you use a camera to show the robot where to weld. There is some tools where you have a physical object that you point and click where the robot should weld. I even think there's some robot companies that have a free drive mechanism on an industrial robot. So like you're basically able to pull that to show it points and teach it to weld as well. So what I believe is the coming 5 or 10 years, we will see the industrial robots and the cobots sort of merge into one solution where it's like the ease of use is there regardless of if it's a robot that is built to be close to humans or it's one that's built to be in an industrial environment.
Yeah, I agree that the structure of the robot arms They are become lighter, and the industrial robots are faster than cobots, but the cobots are becoming faster, and this convergence of the two technologies coming. The company that they produce the robot, the manufacturing to optimize the production SKU, they are creating the same controller. You show them the application, and in that with and the controller is become a PC and become a edge computing. So this edge computing, which is the same concept of our power source edge, can provide that web
Yeah.
base interface for the user.
You're really moving from the traditional way where you have more of a code editor and you need to be more or less a programmer, but in robot language to be able to fully utilize that into setup where it's more app-like or like computer software, modern computer software like, where you have a really intuitive user interface, both to control the robot and to control the power source.
Yeah, and I saw in the E-Fort and ESAB or in Sumig, the developers make it easier for the welders,
Yeah.
for the operators, so the screen more friendly, the user experience easier. I was in Japan in trade show, and they said that in that country that they are very high density of a robot, they are having a lack of technician. So it's not only a lack of a shortage of employee to manufacture manually, and he told us that they must to make easier because is take a long time to prepare a technician or programmer. So as easier as the equipment, easier to introduce the technology. So I mean there is some company that they have investment for robotics. They also, I mean, they have money to make this, but they don't have the technician or some specialized guy. And also, it's important to say that they have 50% of manufacturing in the world are in manually mode. I mean, we as a world we have only 50% working in industry 3.0, that is robotics, and 50% working in 2.0. So there is a lot of job to make in this direction. And also it's important to say that to maintenance. So what your point of view about to maintain this product? Which is the development to be easier to remote access for this app or source, for example, or
Yeah, and that's really a trend in industrial equipment, that you want more remote features. You want to be able to understand equipment status and error codes and maintenance intervals, and also moving from a reactive maintenance into more preventive and actually a predictive maintenance. So you can understand it's not only about servicing every year or so, it's about when the equipment has gone through use that requires maintenance, then you're there ready to maintain it, to keep your equipment running.
yeah. And also in digital you have the Weld Cloud Fleet.
Yeah.
That is focused on this.
Yeah.
So is very interesting our solution, because this kind of problem that is related to how to make the maintenance easily or decrease the stop time or the downtime for the equipment could be also
Helping, especially when you have a large fleet of welding equipment, helping the fleet manager understand these hundreds and hundreds of power sources I have. In some cases, it's even, where is it? What is the physical location of this power source? And then, okay, what do I need to fix on it? What is the service interval I need to have on this machine? When was it last serviced? When do I need to call for a new technician to come and service it? These kind of things is really what we capture in Weld Cloud Fleet. and also gives you like an overview of what your fleet is doing. So not into details, but it's still okay, which machines are welding, which have a lot of stoppage, to give you an overview of what's happening in my fleet.
Yeah, nice. Very good. Now, just talk a little bit about European positioning
Yeah.
in robotics. So we know that European countries are more, I can say, they start a long time ago with robotics, so they are mature on this subject and digital. What's your point of view about this? What's happening now in Europe or in another place about it?
And that has been driven from the start by the automotive industry in Europe, where we have some strong automotive clusters, and they really spearheaded the use of robotics and robotic welding in serial production. And what we've seen is that becoming more and more accessible with robotic welding. So it's not only when you have a serial production where you do the same thing over and over. You're becoming, with more digital tool, you're becoming more and more capable of doing these low volume, high mix kind of things where you only do, like in worst cases, you only do a one-off, but it's a complicated component that you don't want to manually weld. If you have a strong tool for that, you can still program that part and run it. So that is a trend we're seeing. Then also the whole trend with cobot welding originated in Europe, in Denmark actually, where the company Universal Robotics spearheaded this. They created the first robot that was built to be close to humans with force sensors and designed to not have pinch points and designed to be a bit slower so that you could work side by side with the robots. And that has evolved, and then they've added the nice programming interface that is now what makes it so easy to weld with those. So that trend is also coming here. It's being picked up by other brands now as well. UR is still leading it, but there's more competition in the market now. So that is what's happened recently in Europe.
Ah, nice. Yes. We can see the movement from China. They are buying every year more and more robots. They are the number one to buying robots. So this is important to know that they have we have idea that China have a lot of laborers and easy to hire and cheap, low cost. But so why, if they have this, they are investing in robots?
But that's the thing. I think you said it there. The impression is that it's cheap to do it in China.
Yeah.
And that's not true anymore.
Yeah.
It is still cheaper, but labor costs have gone up. And it's the same trend there. The younger generation doesn't want to sit by a conveyor belt and assemble things or so on. And the solution then is automation. And there's an upside with that as well, that if you automate, you might as well do that in Europe or in South America or in North America, because you're nearshoring production. You're limiting the impact of trade, of supply disturbances that we saw during the pandemic, and now with the tariffs going on that will impact global supply chains. One way of offsetting that is with automation on regional basis.
Yeah, I'm in 2019. I was in China in a trade show, and I was in a booth asking for a Chinese guy how is the cost for a welder in that area, is in Beijing, and he told me is about, in that time, is about $1,200. So it's very high. It's more than here. And I didn't be convinced with that answer. And another day I talked with another guy in the same trade show, and the guy confirmed the information. So it's not cheap anymore. And also the productivity and the space and all the automation benefits occur. So we know that this is a culture. Automation, in my point of view, robotics is a culture of the company. We can introduce this little by little as fast as the company can absorb this culture. Not is not only a financial question. Of course, this is important thing, but also how the people will deal with this. Who is gonna be involved? Because a new technology must to be involved with and study and reading manuals and receive the training and understand what is happening. So there is a background, and I believe this is the European culture. They create products to be in a robotic weld and not by hand. Is mandatory today a production. And as you said, the low volume, high mix also need a welder, and there is no welders. Is lack of welders, and the solution to provide this is some tools, sensors, to avoid a little bit the extremely complex tooling, because tooling expensive, and the low pack, you don't need a higher cost tooling. Offline programming like Octopus and so, and to control if this is really good, you can use digital to monitoring. So there is a bunch of tools that can deal with this. In your point of view, the leaders countries in Europe about the technology, no, it's not a list, but which is the best or the players that you can consider now?
Well, as I mentioned before, it used to be very Germany focused, but now it's like it's spreading out, and especially when it's not only the robot itself, it's the software and the sensors and the technology. Like, we see solutions coming from Denmark. We see solutions also coming from Poland is really good at software, for example. And we see other countries.
There's such a
Yeah, and like France has some robotic solutions that are really strong. So you're seeing it more and more in Central Europe.
And I know that one time ago, the robotics is more related with hardware, and there is a software, of course, that is kinematics and inverse kinematics, but this math is solved. And now the differentiation is software and bees to use, as we told. And there is a lot of people in different countries that make this development of software. So today is easy to become, if the guy study by himself, he can become a good programmer or dev. And there is a bunch of training online and good trainings and good course. And there is a bunch of libraries online and books and everything. So now is open for which we want to do, is only go internet and spend some time there.
And really, that has been the trend for quite a while, that you see what we call point solutions being developed, where it's specific software to solve one piece of the puzzle. Like, how do I program better? How do I measure things? How do I work with the sensor? And really what we at ESAB is working on is to tie it more together, not to have these islands of solutions, but rather have an ecosystem of solutions that fit together. And since we are in the welding and cutting business, that is, of course, our focus, to build like a platform that ties together the whole workflow, all the way from the material preparation and the cutting through your operations, where you need to track productivity, you need to document what's happening. In certain industries, like, you need to know every single thing. Where did the plate come from? Where did the wire come from? Which batch is it? Who is working on it? Are they qualified to work on it? And so on. Being able to track all of that in one continuous workflow. And then over to the actual welding, where it's regardless if it's a manual or a robotic application, being able to track that welding, understand that welding, how efficient are we? What are the bottlenecks? Like we have few welders, we want to make sure that they are as productive as possible. They shouldn't be waiting for material or grinding things post them and pre-welding and all these things that impact productivity. So to be able to have the platform that provides you the oversight and insights into this, and then if you're working in these high traceability or high requirement industries, also being able to consolidate all of that tracking that you did and store that and be able to share that with your customers to show them, hey, I have 100% control over everything here. Everything is followed to the digit, so to say. So that is what ESAB is building on the digital side.
Yeah, I strongly believe in this ESAB digital ecosystem,
Yep.
or we can say that is a 110 years company with about 9,000 employees, and there is very strong people knowledge, and putting this together, we are creating very interesting stuff that the customers will really made value their operations and safety and quality and everything. So this ecosystem is very strong, and we're gonna show very different, or not different by only to be different, but their values products day by day for them.
Yeah, and that's where we see that we can really add value, that when the things that you produce become more complex, but these skilled persons to do the job become more and more scarce, well, then we need to take the knowledge we have and put it into the products we deliver. And a big part of that is the digital solutions.
Yeah.
And I think we're just in the start of this. Like over time, it will become more and more capable of providing really good advice on how to do things. Like, how do I weld this the most efficient way to get to the quality I need?
The welder is the human is very valuable resource that we need to use better than ever, and give him the tools, the right tools to make their job with efficiency, safety, and quality. So the whole products are like this approach. So
it's not about replacing people. It's about
not
helping people become more productive.
Yeah, helping people to make their, because as we are seeing that cobots is another tool for the toolbox.
It's a welding machine. It's
and
not
welding machine is used to be in the past. The company produced a large batch using stick electrodes. And now we've entered in the MIG and inverter and flux and metal core wire to speed it up. And now then robots, and now cobots and digital. So everything is a tool to serve the human, to serve us, to make us more efficient, and of course to improve our quality of life. And made these and created this environmental safety and everything. Very good. The one important point is, we already discussed a little bit, but what is the benefits to integrate digital solutions with robotics?
So there's multiple inputs on this, where it can be to be able to use robotics in the first place, right? Like I need to be able to efficiently program things for it to make sense for me to have a robot, because the way my production looks like is I do small batches of things and I need to be really efficient on programming that. There is where a software like Octopus could really help. There's also the need of having productivity insights on the robots you have. Like not only are they welding or not, but when they're not welding, what are they doing then? And that is the insights you need to be able to improve your operation, right?
Yeah.
How do I optimize cycle times? How do I optimize upkeep to make sure that my investment is constantly working? And then, depending on industry, some industries have really high requirements on traceability. So then it's about supporting that traceability, making sure all the welds on a part are according to the VPSs that apply for that.
Yes.
And being able to prove that. Then you have other things where, like, if you're doing really complex parts, it can be that you have a high scrap rate. Well, we have a solution for that as well with welding analytics, being able to detect when you have porosity or burn through on a complex part, and both being able to catch that early on in the process before it goes way down and a lot of labor is added to it and you need to scrap it or rework it, but also being able to troubleshoot what is it in my welding that is causing these issues. That is also something you can do with digital.
These tools, I was checking some company that they already have robots from 10 years, 15 years, and the parameters and the procedure is on over the controller or over the power source, and they don't have documentation about that. So they spend a lot of time to achieve the best parameters, but they don't have this in some place. Someone have this in Excel file, someone have this in their personal book, the operator, the programmer, but when these guys left the company, this information that is make value for the company. It's not the product itself, but how to use them.
Yep.
So how is the cost of good parameter of the welding? That you spend 5 years, 3 years to achieve the best amperage, the best for that condition, the best voltage and stick out. And this information is very valuable. So using digital like Weld Cloud Notes to create these and documentation these, you can save.
Yeah.
I was calculating the return of investment of this software is less than 2 months. In some cases, in less than 1 month, because if you lose this information, is very, very danger for the production
Yeah.
or for the customers. So I believe this is very important to join the robotics with digital. Okay, so there is any success story about digital solution robotic that you can share with us?
So we have a lot. Let's start with the obvious, and that is, of course, where you implement offline programming to be able to program more complex part in a quicker manner. I know, for example, you have a big project ongoing here right now where it's big complex parts and it's, I don't know if it's 10 or 20 similar parts, but still different, that will greatly benefit from Octopus. Instead of spending multiple days per part, it's like probably going to be done all parts in 1 or 2 days. So those kind of things we have a lot of. Then we also have our welding analytics solution where you're able to catch weld defects in production. And if you're running like a high, a low mix, high volume kind of production, you're doing the same part over and over. Right?
Yeah.
And you have complex parts where you have certain defects. Catching them early on in the flow is of great value and can help you troubleshoot as well. We have multiple cases from automotive industry where we've been able to help this, and the customer deploys this on all the tricky welding stations to make sure they catch these really tricky things early on in the process. Then with Weld Cloud, we also have some surprising things where you think you have control over the robots, but we've seen that when we've deployed Weld Cloud in some customers, that they then realize, well, I have 2 identical stations, but one is double the productivity of the other. There's something wrong here. So we've had those kind of cases as well. So getting better control and insights in your operation through digital is really going to benefit the customers.
I received also a success history from a customer that he start use the Weld Cloud Productivity, and they thought there is a welder in special that is the king of welders, and there is another welders in the same company. And then when they analyze the result of report, they realize that the king of welder is not so a good welder. There is a lot of defect or downtime.
Yeah.
And another guys that is more is not in the evidence was very good. So they could to make even a payment just or fair between these. So one produce more or not. So is a result of a digital. Is not a feeling. Is a numbers.
You can really get the insights not only on single metrics, but if you tie together the whole Weld Cloud solution, you can look at both productivity and quality and traceability in the same time. Because what you describe here is one guy is really productive, or he has a high output, but the quality is quite poor, and there's probably a lot of issues down the line. And then you have another guy whose total productivity is probably higher because he's producing at a slower rate but higher quality.
Yes. And once they don't have traceability in that part, they could understand. So in these cases, this I also say and repeat, the return of this investment is pretty fast. For the automotive, especially, they to avoid some recalls. I believe must be mandatory for every welded part this kind of solution.
And if you extrapolate that example that you had up on more of a global scale, if you're a global company that have production on tens of sites globally, being able to have the same kind of insights in these sites and understand what is the actual output of good enough quality. And you can really pinpoint these, like what is the best practice and how do I get that best practice and deploy it globally.
Yes, once is a cloud based, every plant can access the same documentation, for example, in notes. So the same part can be produced in any part of the world with the same parameters. And even if they use the Aristo Edge power source, they can transfer the parameters from one power source to the cloud and the cloud to another power source in different country or and everywhere. So it's guaranteed that is using the rights.
And it's moving in that direction overall with ESA platform to be able to have more and more of an orchestrating role where you if you have, especially in these customers that have global operations, to be able to have like a centralized specialist office that like do programming for multiple sites. You do really efficient programming and can deploy it locally. Being able to transfer programs both on welding and on robots between different cells and like adjust and fine tune. This just being able to orchestrate it on a global level. That will really drive
very interesting. Very interesting because I was in some plants of the same company. They are welding similar parts or the same thickness, the same material, and each plant there is the process engineer with their parameters, and they repeat this in different countries. So in this case, using digital is one central knowledge that can be spread out of everything. Very interesting.
And if you have that one or two unicorn persons that are like, they know everything. And they are the ones that needs to go out and like optimize everything. If you can leverage them in more sites through a digital solution, that can really drive benefits.
Yes. This is very interesting point that customer can have this global customer with Octopus also are all the digital is the transfer knowledge from one place to another, and there is no so many, you said, unicorns.
Yeah.
So these guys can be in one country and then send for everybody.
Yep.
Very interesting, very interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation on your ideas. I'm glad to meet you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Fabio, and exchange ideas with the local robotics expert here in Brazil.
Yeah, we're gonna make another rounds of this conversation next trip. Gonna have our first Latin American meeting about digital solution robotic this year. So we're gonna invite some specialists to come here, and very, very interesting. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching us. Like, share, and subscribe our channels. See you in the next podcast.